The gust of autumn wind came out of nowhere, tearing through the downtown street corner with such ferocity that Connor Lawson barely had time to shield his daughter's face before a tornado of white papers erupted around them like confetti at a parade. "Daddy, look." 7-year-old Macy squealed, reaching for one of the sheets as it danced past her outstretched fingers. Connor acted on instinct, his construction-calloused hands shooting out to snatch papers from the air while his eyes tracked the rest scattering across the intersection. Behind them, he heard a woman's desperate cry, followed by the clatter of expensive heels against concrete. He turned to see her, a striking woman in a charcoal suit, her dark hair whipping around her face as she lunged for the escaping documents. "Macy, stay right here on the sidewalk," Connor instructed firmly, pointing to the spot beside the lamppost. "Do not move." "Okay, Daddy." Connor sprinted into the street, dodging a honking taxi as he grabbed a handful of papers that had plastered themselves against a parking meter. His work boots pounded the pavement as he chased down more sheets, catching them mid-flight, peeling them off car windshields, even fishing one from a puddle before it could become completely soaked. His arms filled with the rescued documents, and he could feel his heart hammering from the exertion as he jogged back toward the woman. She stood near Macy, holding her own collection of retrieved papers, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Up close, Connor noticed the sheen of unshed tears in her green eyes, the way her perfectly manicured hands trembled slightly as she clutched the documents to her chest. She was beautiful in that polished, untouchable way that made him acutely aware of the paint stains on his jeans and the worn state of his jacket. "I think I got most of them," Connor said, extending his armful toward her. "There are a few that went into that alley, but these seem okay." "Well, except this one." He held up the dampened page apologetically. "You have no idea what you just did," the woman breathed, and Connor noticed her voice carried an elegant quality that matched her appearance. Thank you so much. I cannot believe I was so careless." "My briefcase latch must have broken, and I did not even notice until—" "It happens," Connor interrupted gently, not wanting to see her berate herself further. "Wind like that, it could have happened to anyone." Macy tugged on Connor's sleeve. "Daddy, you were really fast, like a superhero." The woman's expression softened as she looked down at Macy, and Connor watched the stress in her face ease slightly. "He really was he not? What is your name, sweetheart?" "Macy. I am 7 3/4. "3/4 is very important," the woman agreed seriously, and Connor appreciated that she did not talk down to his daughter. "My name is Petra Vaughn." Connor shifted his weight, still holding the papers. "Connor Lawson, listen, do you need help getting these sorted or anything?" "I mean, we have a few minutes before we need to catch our bus." Petra's gaze swept over him, taking in details he suddenly wished were different, but she did not look at him with disdain or dismissal. Instead, something like curiosity flickered in those green eyes. "A bus? In this part of town?" "We were just leaving the library," Macy volunteered helpfully. "Daddy gets me books there every Saturday because we cannot afford to buy them, but Daddy says borrowed books are just as good as owned books. Maybe even better because more people get to love them." Connor felt heat crawl up his neck. "Macy, honey, that is a wonderful philosophy," Petra said quickly, and Connor could not detect any condescension in her tone. "Your daddy sounds very wise." She began organizing the papers, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency despite their earlier trembling. "I actually have a car just around the corner. Could I possibly offer you both a ride? It is the absolute least I can do." "We could not," Connor started. "Please," Petra interrupted, meeting his eyes with startling directness. "You quite literally chased down some of the most important documents of my career. You saved me from a disaster I cannot even fully articulate. A simple ride is nothing compared to that." Connor glanced down at Macy, who was giving him her most winning smile, the one that always made his resistance crumble. The bus ride home was 45 minutes, and he could see the exhaustion starting to set into his daughter's posture. They had been out since morning, visiting the library, then the free museum hours, trying to fill their Saturday with activities that did not cost money. All right, he relented. Thank you. That is very kind. Petra's smile transformed her entire face, making her somehow even more beautiful. Wonderful. Follow me. She led them around the corner to where a sleek black sedan waited, clearly expensive though Connor could not identify the exact make. The interior was cream leather, immaculate and smelling of that new car scent mixed with subtle perfume. Macy's eyes went wide as she climbed into the back seat, and Connor helped her with the seatbelt before sliding into the passenger seat beside Petra. Where to? Petra asked, starting the engine with a purr that was almost silent. Connor gave her the address of their apartment building in a neighborhood that was definitely not on the same economic level as the downtown business district, where they had met. He watched Petra's face carefully as she input the address into her GPS, but again, she showed no judgment, just nodded and pulled smoothly into traffic. So what do you do, Connor? Petra asked as they drove, her eyes on the road but her tone genuinely interested. Construction. Mostly residential right now, some commercial jobs when they come up. He did not mention that the residential work was spotty, that he was cobbling together whatever contracts he could find to keep the bills paid and food on the table. You. I work in business, Petra said, which Connor recognized as the vague answer of someone who did not want to elaborate. He understood that. Everyone had their reasons for privacy. What kind of books did you get, Macy? Petra asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. Macy launched into an enthusiastic description of her selections, including a picture book about dinosaurs and a chapter book about a girl detective that Connor had promised to read to her. As his daughter chattered happily, Connor found himself studying Petra's profile. There was something magnetic about her, beyond just the obvious physical attraction. She had a presence, a kind of contained energy that suggested someone used to commanding rooms and making decisions that mattered. The drive took 20 minutes with weekend traffic, and when they pulled up in front of Connor's building, he felt a strange reluctance to leave the cocoon of the car. Macy was already unbuckling, thanking Petra with the earnest politeness Connor had worked hard to instill in her. Listen, Petra said as Connor opened his door. I know this might sound forward, but would you be willing to give me your number? I would like to properly thank you. Perhaps take you both to dinner. Connor froze, one foot on the curb. You do not need to do that. I want to, Petra insisted, and there was something in her voice that made Connor look back at her. Their eyes met, held. Please. Against his better judgment, Connor rattled off his number, and Petra entered it into her phone with swift taps. I will text you so you have mine. Okay, Connor said, feeling off balance in a way that had nothing to do with the physical act of exiting the vehicle. And thank you for the ride. Thank you for being my hero today, Petra replied, and the way she said it made Connor's heart do something complicated in his chest. As they walked into the building and climbed the 3 flights to their apartment, Macy could not stop talking about the nice lady with the fancy car. Connor unlocked their door, ushering his daughter inside to their modest 2-bedroom apartment. It was clean and loved, if sparse. The furniture was secondhand but well-maintained, the walls decorated with Macy's artwork and a few family photos that included Connor's late wife, Sarah. Connor's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out to see a message from an unknown number. This is Petra. Thank you again. Would next Saturday work for dinner? He stared at the screen for a long moment, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. This was complicated. He was not in a position to date someone who drove cars that probably cost more than he made in a year. He had Macy to think about, and his daughter's stability and happiness came before any potential romantic interest. And yet, there was something about Petra that made him want to say yes, something beyond the obvious attraction. Who is texting you, Daddy? Macy asked, appearing beside him with her library books clutched to her chest. Petra. She is asking if we would like to have dinner with her next Saturday. Macy's face lit up. Really? Can we? She was so nice, Daddy. Connor looked at his daughter's hopeful expression and felt his resolve weakening. Let me think about it, sweetheart. Go put your books in your room and then we will make lunch. After Macy scampered off, Connor typed out a response. Next Saturday works, but please, nothing too fancy. Macy is 7. The reply came within seconds. I know the perfect place. Family-friendly, I promise. Is 6 p.m. okay? Connor confirmed, then pocketed his phone and headed to the kitchen to see what he could make from their groceries. As he prepared grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, he tried to ignore the flutter of anticipation in his stomach. He had not felt this way since Sarah, had not even considered dating since losing her to cancer 3 years ago. The grief had been too raw, the responsibility of single parenthood too consuming. But standing in his kitchen, listening to Macy sing to herself in her room, Connor allowed himself to feel a small spark of something that might have been hope. The week passed in its usual rhythm of early mornings, job sites, picking Macy up from school, homework, dinner, bedtime stories. Connor's work crew noticed he checked his phone more often than usual, but they ribbed him good-naturedly about it. He and Petra had exchanged a few messages throughout the week, nothing too deep, just casual conversation that felt surprisingly easy despite their obvious differences. On Thursday evening, while Macy was absorbed in her homework at the kitchen table, Connor's phone rang with an actual call from Petra. His pulse kicked up a notch as he answered. Hi, he said, walking into his bedroom for some privacy. Hi, Petra replied, and he could hear the smile in her voice. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. No, it is fine. Macy's doing homework. Connor sat on the edge of his bed, suddenly nervous. What is up? I wanted to confirm Saturday and also. Petra paused, and Connor heard her take a breath. I wanted to be honest with you about something. When I said I work in business, that was true, but somewhat understated. I am actually the CEO of Vaughn Enterprises. We are a tech company, fairly large. I tell you this not to impress you, but because I would rather you hear it from me than discover it accidentally. Connor processed this information, pieces clicking into place. The expensive car, the careful privacy, the important documents. Okay, he said slowly. Thank you for telling me. Does it change things? Petra asked, and he heard genuine concern in her voice. Should it? For some people, yes. It makes them uncomfortable, or they start seeing dollar signs, or they treat me differently. She sighed. I am just Petra. The CEO thing is what I do, not who I am. Connor found himself smiling despite the intimidating revelation. I am just Connor. The construction worker thing is what I do, not who I am. I like that, Petra said softly. I like that a lot. They talked for another 30 minutes, conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. Connor learned that Petra was 34, had built her company from the ground up over the past decade, and worked absurd hours that she was trying to reduce. Petra learned that Connor was 32, had been married young, and that being Macy's dad was the role he was most proud of in his life. When they finally hung up, Connor felt like he had known Petra much longer than a week. There was a connection there, something genuine beneath the surface differences in their circumstances. Saturday arrived with unseasonably warm weather for autumn. Connor debated over what to wear, eventually settling on his nicest jeans, a button-down shirt he usually reserved for parent-teacher conferences, and the leather jacket that had been a gift from Sarah before she got sick. Macy chose her favorite purple dress and insisted Connor braid her hair, which he did with the practiced skill of a single father who had learned to do all the things his daughter needed. Petra arrived right at 6, knocking on their apartment door rather than texting from the car. When Connor opened the door, his breath caught. She wore dark jeans and a soft green sweater that made her eyes even more striking, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked beautiful but also more approachable than she had in her business suit. Hi, Petra said, her smile warm and maybe a little nervous. Hi yourself. Connor stepped back to let her in, and Macy immediately rushed over, showing Petra her dress and explaining in great detail the intricacies of the braid in her hair. "Your dad did that?" Petra asked, impressed. "That is amazing. He is really good at braids," Macy confirmed. "He watches videos to learn new ones." Connor felt his ears heat. "We should probably get going." Petra drove them to a restaurant that managed to be both nice and genuinely family-friendly, the kind of place with real tablecloths, but also a kids' menu with activities. Macy was delighted by the crayons and immediately set to work coloring while the adults perused the menu. "This is perfect," Connor said, meaning it. "Thank you. I am glad." Petra watched Macy color for a moment, her expression soft. "She is a wonderful kid, Connor. You should be proud." "I am, every single day." Connor looked at his daughter, his heart swelling with the familiar, fierce love he always felt when looking at her. "She is my whole world." "Tell me about her mother," Petra said gently. "If you are comfortable, I noticed the wedding ring you still wear." Connor glanced down at the simple gold band on his finger. He had moved it from his left hand to his right about a year after Sarah died, but had not been able to take it off completely. "Her name was Sarah. We met young, got married at 21, had Macy a year later. She was diagnosed with breast cancer when Macy was 4. She fought hard, but..." He trailed off, the familiar ache settling in his chest. "I am so sorry," Petra said, reaching across the table to touch his hand briefly. "That must have been incredibly difficult." "It was. It still is, sometimes. But Sarah made me promise to keep living, to be happy, to make sure Macy grew up knowing joy. So that is what I am trying to do." Their server arrived to take their orders, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Petra engaged Macy in discussions about school, her favorite subjects, her friends. Connor watched the way Petra listened to his daughter with genuine attention, never patronizing, always respectful of Macy's thoughts and opinions. "What about you?" Connor asked after their food arrived. "Do you want kids?" Petra's expression turned thoughtful. "I do, actually. I always have. But building the company took everything I had for so long, and then I looked up one day and realized I was 34 and single and had no prospects. I threw myself into work because it was safe, you know. Predictable, but lately I have been feeling like something is missing." "Is that why you agreed to have dinner with a guy who chased your papers down the street?" Connor asked, a hint of teasing in his voice. "No," Petra said, meeting his eyes directly. "I agreed to have dinner, because in that moment, when you could have just walked away, you did not hesitate to help. And because your daughter looked at you like you hung the moon, and I thought any man who inspires that kind of love in his child must be someone worth knowing." Connor felt warmth spread through his chest, and for a moment, he could not find words. Macy saved him by announcing she had finished her kids' meal and asking if she could possibly have dessert. Both adults laughed, the tension breaking into something comfortable and easy. They shared a chocolate lava cake, Macy chattering happily between bites, and Connor found himself thinking that this was the most natural first date he had ever been on. Because that was what this was, he realized. A first date, and it was going remarkably well. After dinner, Petra drove them home again, and this time when they arrived at Connor's building, she walked them to the door. Macy hugged Petra goodbye with the unself-conscious affection of a child who had decided someone was good people, and then Connor ushered her inside with instructions to get ready for bed. In the hallway, Connor turned back to Petra. "Thank you for tonight. It was really nice." "It was," Petra agreed. She hesitated, then asked, "Would you want to do this again? Maybe just the two of us next time. I mean, I love Macy, but I would like to get to know you better too." "I would like that," Connor said, "but I should tell you dating with a kid is complicated. Macy comes first, always. My schedule is pretty rigid around her needs, and I cannot afford fancy restaurants or..." "Connor," Petra interrupted gently. "I am not asking you to be anything other than who you are. I like who you are, and I completely understand that Macy is your priority." "I would be concerned if she was not," she smiled. Besides, I can afford fancy restaurants. What I cannot afford is more time with people who only want to know me for my money or my company. You have treated me like a person from the moment we met. That is worth more than anything." Connor felt something shift in his chest, some wall he had not even known he was keeping up beginning to crumble. "Okay then. Yes, I would really like to see you again. How about next Friday? I could pick you up after you drop Macy at school. I usually work Fridays. Could you take a day?" Petra asked. "I promise to make it worth your while. I want to show you something." Connor thought about his current project, which was actually slightly ahead of schedule. "Okay, Friday." Petra's smile was radiant. She leaned in, rising on her toes, and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. "Good night, Connor. Good night, Petra." Connor floated back into his apartment, touching the spot where her lips had been. Macy was already in her pajamas, waiting for her bedtime story, and as Connor read to her about the adventures of the girl detective, his mind kept drifting to green eyes and the promise of Friday. The week crawled by. Connor worked his jobs, spent his evenings with Macy, and exchanged increasingly flirtatious text messages with Petra. They talked on the phone every night after Macy went to bed, conversations that stretched past midnight more than once, leaving Connor exhausted the next day, but somehow energized at the same time. He told his best friend Marcus about Petra, leaving out the CEO part at first, just saying he had met someone. Marcus, who worked on the construction crew with Connor, was thrilled and immediately started giving unsolicited dating advice that made Connor laugh. "You deserve this, man," Marcus said seriously as they ate lunch at the job site on Thursday. "You have been alone for too long. Macy needs to see her dad happy living life." "I am happy," Connor protested. "You are content," Marcus corrected. "You are a great dad, best I know, but you have been in survival mode since Sarah died. Being happy, really happy, that is different than just getting through the days." Connor thought about that conversation as he dropped Macy off at school Friday morning, kissing her forehead and reminding her that Mrs. Chen from across the hall would be picking her up since he would be out for the day. Macy, who adored Mrs. Chen and her endless supply of cookies, was thrilled with the arrangement. Petra arrived at 9 sharp, driving a different car this time, a dark blue SUV that was still clearly expensive but somehow more practical. Connor climbed in, noticing she wore jeans again and a casual jacket. "Where are we going?" he asked as she pulled away from the curb. "It is a surprise," Petra said, her eyes dancing with mischief. "Do you trust me?" "I am in your car headed to an unknown destination, so I guess I have to," she laughed, the sound genuine and unguarded. "Fair point." They drove for about an hour, heading out of the city into more rural areas. Petra played music, an eclectic mix that ranged from classic rock to contemporary pop, and they sang along badly to songs they both knew. Connor felt years younger, like he was allowed to be just a man on a date with a beautiful woman, not a single father with the weight of the world on his shoulders. Finally, Petra turned down a long driveway that led to a stable. Connor raised his eyebrows. "Horses? Is that okay?" "I probably should have asked, but I wanted it to be a surprise. This is my escape, the place I come when work gets too overwhelming. I thought maybe you would enjoy it too." Connor stepped out of the car, breathing in the smell of hay and horses and autumn air. "I have not been around horses since I was a kid. My grandfather had a small farm." "Perfect," Petra said, linking her arm through his in a gesture that felt natural and right. "Then let me reintroduce you." She led him into the stable, where a weathered man in his 60s greeted her warmly. "Miss Petra, got Thunder and Willow all ready for you." "Thanks, Joe. This is Connor." Joe shook Connor's hand with a grip that spoke of decades of hard work. "Good to meet you. Any friend of Miss Petra's is welcome here." Petra showed Connor to Willow, a gentle bay mare with kind eyes, and took Thunder, a spirited gray gelding, for herself. She helped Connor remember the basics of riding, patient and encouraging, never making him feel inadequate for being rusty. Soon they were walking the horses along a trail that wound through the property, fall leaves crunching under hooves. "This is amazing," Connor said, relaxing into the rhythm of the horse's gait. "How did you find this place?" "I was driving around one day about 5 years ago, completely burned out, and I just kept going until I could not see the city anymore. I ended up here, and Joe was kind enough to let me ride. I have been coming back ever since. It reminds me there is more to life than board meetings and profit margins." They rode for over an hour, sometimes talking, sometimes just enjoying the silence and the beautiful day. When they finally returned to the stable, Connor helped Petra cool down the horses and brush them, the work familiar and satisfying in a way his construction jobs sometimes were not. "Hungry?" Petra asked after they had thanked Joe and gotten back in the SUV. "Starving." She drove them to a small diner in the nearby town, the kind of place with laminated menus and a waitress who called everyone honey. They ordered burgers and fries and milkshakes, and Connor could not remember the last time food tasted so good. "Can I ask you something?" Petra said, dragging a fry through ketchup. "What happened after Sarah died? I mean, obviously that is a huge question, but I guess I am asking how you managed. Single parent, working, grieving." Connor took a sip of his chocolate milkshake, gathering his thoughts. "Honestly, I do not know how I did it. There were days I could barely get out of bed, but Macy needed me, so I got up. There were nights I cried myself to sleep after she went down, but by morning I had to be dad again. Sarah's parents helped at first, but they moved to Florida about a year ago. My parents died when I was in my 20s, car accident, so it has mostly just been me and Macy figuring it out together." "That is incredibly strong, Connor, or incredibly stubborn," he said with a slight smile. "I made a promise to Sarah. She was so scared, not of dying but of leaving Macy. She made me swear I would be both parents, that I would not let grief make me absent, so I show up. Every day, no matter what, I show up for my daughter." Petra reached across the table and took his hand, her fingers warm and soft against his rough, calloused ones. "Macy is lucky to have you." "I am lucky to have her. She is what got me through." They finished their meal and drove back toward the city, but instead of taking Connor home, Petra pulled into a park. "Walk with me." They strolled along a path that circled a small lake, the afternoon sun starting its descent toward the horizon. Other people were out enjoying the day: joggers, families, an elderly couple holding hands. Connor found his hand somehow in Petra's, their fingers interlaced, and it felt right. "I need to tell you something," Petra said as they walked. "I have not dated much. Actually, barely at all. I had a boyfriend in college, and then a few failed attempts in my 20s that crashed and burned because I prioritized work over everything. I am not good at this, at opening up and being vulnerable, but with you, it feels easy, natural, and that terrifies me a little." Connor stopped walking, turning to face her. "You want to know what terrifies me?" "The fact that I am falling for a woman who lives in a completely different world than I do. You are a CEO, I fix houses. You drive cars I could not afford in my wildest dreams. I shop at thrift stores and clip coupons. How does that work?" "I do not know," Petra admitted. "But I know I have not felt this way about anyone, ever, not even close. You make me want things I thought I had given up on. You make me feel like maybe there is room in my life for something besides work. Petra, I come with complications, a daughter who is always going to be my first priority. An ex-wife I still love in the way you love someone who shaped your life. Financial struggles that are not going away anytime soon. Baggage. We all have baggage, Connor. Mine just looks different. The pressure of running a company, the loneliness of being at the top, the people who want to know me only for what I can do for them." She stepped closer, looking up at him. "You helped me without knowing who I was, without wanting anything in return. That is so rare in my world. You are real and honest, and you love your daughter with everything you have. How could I not want that in my life?" Connor cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "This is crazy." "Completely insane," Petra agreed, her eyes never leaving his. I am going to kiss you now. I was hoping you would. Their lips met softly at first, tentative, learning each other. Then Petra's hands slid up his chest to his shoulders and Connor pulled her closer, deepening the kiss. It had been so long since he had felt this kind of connection with anyone, this electricity that seemed to arc between them. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing harder, Connor rested his forehead against Petra's. "Wow," he whispered. "Yeah," she agreed breathlessly. "Wow." They walked back to the car hand in hand, neither wanting to break the contact. On the drive back to Connor's apartment, Petra's hand rested on his thigh, and his covered hers, their fingers intertwined. It felt monumental and also completely natural, this shift in their relationship. When they arrived at Connor's building, there was still an hour before he needed to collect Macy from Mrs. Chen. Petra looked at him, a question in her eyes, and Connor made a decision. "Do you want to come up? See where we actually live? I would love that." Connor led her up the 3 flights of stairs, suddenly self-conscious about his modest apartment. But when he unlocked the door and ushered Petra inside, she did not look around with judgment or pity. Instead, her eyes softened as she took in Macy's artwork on the walls, the photos of Sarah that Connor had kept displayed because he wanted his daughter to always see her mother's face, the lived-in comfort of their home. "This is lovely," Petra said sincerely. "You can feel the love here." Connor made coffee, and they sat on his second-hand couch, turned toward each other, knees touching. They talked about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing as easily as it did on the phone. Petra told him about the pressure of board meetings and investor expectations. Connor told her about the satisfaction of building something with his hands, seeing a project transform from blueprint to reality. "Can I ask you something potentially too personal?" Connor ventured. "After that kiss in the park, I think we are past worrying about too personal," Petra said with a smile. "What do you want? Like, ultimately, if you could have your perfect life, what would it look like?" Petra was quiet for a moment, her fingers playing with his. "I want balance. I want to still run my company, but not have it consume every waking moment. I want a partner, someone who sees me as Petra, not as the CEO or the bank account. I want kids, a family. I want Sunday mornings that are slow and easy and dinner around a table with people I love. I want what you have with Macy, that unconditional love and connection." She looked up at him. "What about you?" "I want Macy to grow up happy and secure. I want to provide for her, give her opportunities I never had, and I guess I want someone to share it all with. The good days and the hard ones. Someone who understands that my daughter comes first, but who still wants to be part of our lives." He squeezed her hand. "Someone who kisses me in parks and takes me horseback riding and does not care that I need to check my bank account before going out to eat." "I think we might want the same things," Petra said softly. "I think you might be right." Connor glanced at the clock and sighed. "I need to go get Macy." "Can I come with you?" The question surprised him, but pleasantly. "Are you sure?" "Connor, if this is going where I think it is, where I hope it is, then I need to be part of Macy's life too. Not trying to replace her mother, never that, but as someone who cares about her, and about you." They walked across the hall together, and Mrs. Chen answered with Macy bouncing behind her, chocolate chip cookie in hand. The little girl's face lit up when she saw Petra. "Miss Petra, what are you doing here?" "I spent the day with your dad. We went horseback riding." "Horseback riding?" Macy's eyes went wide. "Daddy, you did not tell me you were going to ride horses." "It was a surprise," Connor said, ruffling her hair. "Did you have a good day with Mrs. Chen?" As Macy launched into a detailed account of her day, including the cookies and a game of cards and a movie, Connor met Petra's eyes over his daughter's head. The warmth he saw there, the genuine affection, made his heart skip. That night, after Macy was in bed, Connor and Petra talked on the phone again, neither wanting to end the day. They made plans for the following week, this time including Macy in a trip to the aquarium. It was becoming clear that whatever was developing between them was not just a fleeting attraction but something deeper, something worth exploring despite the complications. Over the next few weeks, Connor and Petra fell into a pattern. They saw each other several times a week, sometimes just the two of them, often with Macy included. Petra was wonderful with his daughter, never trying too hard but genuinely engaging with her, asking about her interests, listening to her stories from school. Macy, for her part, seemed to blossom under the additional attention, and Connor watched his daughter grow attached to Petra with both joy and a hint of worry. "What if this does not work out?" Connor confided in Marcus one day at work. "Macy is already so attached to her." "Then you deal with it like you deal with everything," Marcus said pragmatically. "But why are you assuming it will not work out? From what you have told me, it sounds pretty solid." "We are from different worlds, Marcus. At some point that has to matter. Only if you let it, brother. Stop borrowing trouble." Connor tried to take that advice to heart, and honestly, when he was with Petra, the differences did not seem to matter. She never flaunted her wealth or made him feel less than. She split costs when he insisted, respected his pride, and seemed genuinely interested in his work and his life. She attended one of Macy's school events when Connor's work schedule made him late, filming the whole thing so he would not miss a moment. She learned to make Macy's favorite dinner, even though Petra admitted she rarely cooked. She fit into the spaces in their lives like she had always been meant to be there. 2 months into their relationship, Petra invited Connor and Macy to her place for the first time. Connor had been curious but had not wanted to push. When they pulled up to the building, a sleek high-rise in the most expensive part of the city, Macy pressed her face to the car window in wonder. "You live here," she breathed. "I do," Petra said, glancing at Connor a bit nervously. "Is that okay?" "It is more than okay," Connor assured her, though he felt distinctly out of place as they rode the elevator to the penthouse level. Petra's apartment was stunning. All floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the city, modern furniture that probably cost more than Connor's car, and an open concept that made the space feel both enormous and somehow warm. But what caught Connor's attention were the small personal touches. Photos on the shelves from what looked like company events and personal trips, books stacked on the coffee table, a throw blanket draped over the couch that looked well used, and fresh flowers in a vase on the kitchen counter. "This is beautiful," Connor said honestly. "It is too big for just me," Petra admitted. "I bought it when the company really took off, thinking I needed the space to entertain clients and investors, but mostly I just rattle around in here alone." Macy had gravitated to the windows, looking out at the city spread below. "You can see everything from up here," Petra joined her, pointing out landmarks and telling her stories about different buildings. Connor watched them together, his heart full and aching at the same time. This could be his life, he realized. This amazing woman, his incredible daughter, all of them together. But the voice of doubt whispered that it was too good to be true, that eventually the differences between his and Petra's lives would become too great to bridge. Petra made dinner, or rather, they made it together, Connor helping in the kitchen while Macy set the table with great seriousness. It was pasta with homemade sauce, nothing fancy, but it tasted perfect because they made it together. After dinner, they watched a movie, Macy snuggled between them on Petra's huge couch, and Connor felt contentment settle over him like a warm blanket. When Macy fell asleep halfway through the movie, Connor carefully picked her up. "I should get her home." "Stay," Petra said impulsively. "I have a guest room. Stay the night. We can have breakfast together in the morning." Connor hesitated, then nodded. Petra showed him to the guest room, which had its own attached bathroom and was bigger than Connor's bedroom at home. He laid Macy on the bed, removing her shoes and covering her with the soft comforter. When he stepped back out into the hallway, Petra was waiting. "Thank you," Connor said, "for all of this, for being so wonderful with her." "I am not doing anything special," Petra protested. "I am just being myself with her." "Exactly." Connor pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "That is what makes it so wonderful." They stood in the hallway for a long moment, wrapped in each other's arms, the city lights spilling through the windows around them. Connor felt Petra's heart beating against his chest, steady and sure, and he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could work. The next morning, Petra made pancakes while Connor and Macy sat at her kitchen island. Both of them in pajamas Petra had mysteriously produced. The domesticity of it all made Connor's chest tight with emotion. This was what he had been missing, what he had not even let himself want since Sarah died. A partner, someone to share the daily moments with, not just the big events. As they ate and laughed and planned their day, Connor realized he was falling in love with Petra Vaughn. Maybe had already fallen. And from the way she looked at him when she thought he was not watching, the way she touched his hand as she passed, the way she smiled at Macy, he thought maybe she was falling too. But with love came vulnerability, and that was what Connor grappled with as weeks turned into months. He and Petra navigated the complexities of their relationship, the balance between his time with Macy and his time with Petra, the careful integration of their lives. Petra met Marcus and some of Connor's other friends, fitting in with an ease that surprised Connor. He met some of her colleagues, enduring their curiosity and occasional thinly veiled judgment with as much grace as he could muster. The real test came when Connor's truck broke down, leaving him without transportation and threatening his ability to get to job sites. He did not tell Petra at first, too proud to admit he could not afford the repairs, but she figured it out when he started making excuses about why he could not meet her certain places. She showed up at his apartment on a Tuesday evening, letting herself in with the key he had given her the month before. Connor was helping Macy with math homework, and they both looked up in surprise. "Petra, we were not expecting you," Connor said, standing to greet her. "I know." "We need to talk." She glanced at Macy. "Sweetheart, can you work on your homework in your room for a few minutes? I need to speak with your dad." Macy, sensing the seriousness, gathered her books and retreated without argument. Once they were alone, Petra crossed her arms and fixed Connor with a look. "Your truck broke down 4 days ago. Why did you not tell me?" Connor felt defensive walls slam into place. "How did you find out?" "Marcus mentioned it when I ran into him at the coffee shop near my office." "Connor, why would you not tell me?" "Because it is my problem to solve. We are together. Your problems are my problems." "No," Connor said firmly. "You have your life and your company and your money. I have my life and my daughter and my struggles. I do not need you to rescue me." Petra's expression shifted from frustrated to hurt. "Is that what you think? That I want to rescue you? Connor, I want to help you because I care about you. There is a difference." "I cannot be the guy you throw money at every time something goes wrong," Connor said, his voice rising slightly. "I have my pride, Petra. It is about all I have sometimes." "Your pride is not going to get you to work," Petra shot back, "and it is not going to pay your bills when you lose jobs because you have no transportation." "I will figure it out. I always do." "Why does it have to be you alone against the world?" Petra asked, her voice breaking slightly. "Why can you not let me in? Really in?" Connor ran his hands through his hair, frustration and shame warring in his chest. "Because this is not equal. You can solve my problems with money that means nothing to you. What can I give you? What do I bring to this relationship besides complications and a kid and a life that is held together with duct tape and determination?" The words hung in the air between them, and Connor watched Petra's eyes fill with tears. She blinked them back, her jaw setting in a determined line he had come to recognize. "You really do not see it, do you?" she said quietly. "You do not see what you give me. Connor, you give me peace. You give me normalcy. You give me a reason to leave work at a reasonable hour and look forward to my evenings. You give me laughter and honesty and affection that has nothing to do with what I can do for someone or how I can advance their career. You and Macy give me family, something I have not had since my parents died 6 years ago. You make me feel like I am more than just my job, more than just the company. You make me feel like Petra, just Petra is enough." Connor felt his throat tighten, emotion welling up faster than he could control it. "Petra, let me finish," she interrupted. "I know you are proud. I know you want to handle things yourself, and I respect that, I do. But relationships are about partnership. They are about letting someone stand beside you, not behind you or in front of you, but beside you. If you cannot do that, if you cannot let me help when you need it, then we are not really building something together. We are just two people orbiting each other, and eventually that is going to fall apart. Connor sank back onto the couch, his head in his hands. Everything she was saying was right. He knew it was. But the fear of being seen as less than, of being the poor guy with the rich girlfriend, of losing himself in her world, it had been eating at him. I am scared, he admitted, his voice muffled by his hands. I am terrified that one day you will wake up and realize you can do so much better than me. That I am just a project, a charity case, that you will get bored with playing house with the poor single dad. Petra sat beside him, her hand on his back. Connor, look at me. He lifted his head, meeting her eyes, seeing the tears now streaming down her face. I am not playing anything. This is the most real thing in my life. You are the most real thing in my life, and if you think I could do better, then you drastically underestimate how much I love you. The words seemed to echo in the quiet apartment. Connor stared at her, his heart pounding. You love me. Of course I love you, Petra said, laughing through her tears. I have loved you probably since that first dinner, watching you with Macy, seeing the way you loved her with your whole heart. I fell in love with your kindness and your strength and your stubborn pride. Even when that pride makes me want to shake you. Connor pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against him. I love you too. God, Petra, I love you so much it scares me. They held each other for a long moment, the confession hanging between them, transforming everything. When they finally pulled back, Connor cupped her face in his hands. I am sorry, you are right. I need to let you in, really in. It is just hard when I have been on my own for so long. I know, Petra said gently, and I am not asking you to give up your independence or your pride. I am just asking you to remember that you do not have to do everything alone anymore. Let me help with the truck, not as your savior or your bank account, but as your partner who wants to make sure you can get to work. Connor took a deep breath, pushing past years of ingrained self-reliance. Okay. Thank you, I will pay you back. We will work out the details, Petra said, kissing him softly. Together, that is the key word here, together. Macy emerged from her room then, clearly having been listening. Are you guys okay now? I did not like hearing you fight. Connor and Petra both opened their arms, and Macy rushed into the group hug. We are okay, baby, Connor assured her. Sometimes people who love each other disagree, but we talk it out and we are okay. Miss Petra said she loves you, Macy said, looking up at them both. Does that mean she is going to be like a mom to me? Connor and Petra exchanged glances, and Petra carefully said, I would never try to replace your mom, sweetheart, but if you want, I could be another person who loves you and takes care of you. Would that be okay? Macy considered this with the seriousness only a child could bring to such a question. I think that would be good. I only have one dad, but maybe it is okay to have more than one person who is like a mom. Mom is always with me here, she touched her heart, but you are here for real. So maybe that is okay. Connor felt tears prick his eyes, and he saw Petra was crying again too. Yeah, baby, he managed. That is more than okay. The tension of the fight dissolved, and they spent the evening together, the three of them, finding their balance again. Later, after Macy was asleep and Petra was getting ready to leave, Connor stopped her at the door. Move in with us, he blurted out. Petra turned, eyes wide. What? Not right away, Connor clarified, his heart racing. But soon. This place, it is small and it is not fancy, but it is home. And I want you to be part of that home, really part of it. What do you say? Petra launched herself into his arms, kissing him deeply. When she pulled back, she was grinning. Are you sure? It is a big step. I am sure. I love you, Petra. I want to build a life with you. A real life, with all the complications and compromises that come with it. Then yes, she whispered against his lips. Yes, I will move in with you and Macy, not because your apartment is what I am used to, and not despite the fact that it is small. But because anywhere you and Macy, R is where I want to be. They set a timeline of 2 months, wanting to give Macy time to adjust to the idea and to work out logistics. Petra would keep her penthouse but rent it out, providing additional income that she insisted go into a college fund for Macy. Connor would not have agreed to that before their fight, but he was learning to accept help, to see it as love rather than charity. The 2 months passed in a flurry of activity. Petra began slowly moving her things, starting with clothes and personal items. Connor and Macy helped her pack, turning it into an adventure. They rearranged the apartment to make room, Connor's bedroom becoming their shared room, and they turned the tiny den into an office space where Petra could work from home a few days a week. Petra introduced the idea to her company carefully, letting her executive team know she would be working remotely more often. She faced some pushback, but she held firm, realizing that this relationship, this life she was building with Connor and Macy, was more important than any business deal. Connor, for his part, worked on letting go of his pride in ways that mattered. When a big commercial job came through that required him to work long hours for 2 weeks, he let Petra handle the pickup from school and dinner prep without feeling like he was failing as a father. When Macy needed new shoes and the budget was tight, he accepted Petra's offer to buy them without the automatic refusal that had been his instinct for so long. They were learning each other's rhythms, figuring out how to blend their lives in ways that honored both of their needs. It was not always smooth. There were disagreements about money and parenting approaches and time management, but they talked through each issue, neither of them willing to let problems fester. The day Petra officially moved in was chaos in the best way. Marcus and some guys from Connor's crew helped move the furniture Petra was bringing, teasing Connor mercilessly about his bachelor days being over. Mrs. Chen from across the hall brought cookies and tears, thrilled to see Connor so happy. Macy directed traffic like a tiny general, telling everyone where things should go with absolute authority. By evening, the apartment looked different but somehow more complete. Petra's things mingled with Connor's, her books on his shelves, her coffee maker on his counter, her clothes in his closet. It was tangible proof that this was real, that they were truly building a life together. That night, after Macy was asleep, Connor and Petra christened their shared bedroom, making love with a tenderness and passion that left them both breathless. Lying in each other's arms afterward, the city lights filtering through the curtains, Connor felt a peace he had not known since before Sarah got sick. "I never thought I would have this again," he whispered into the darkness. "I thought my chance at love was over." "I never thought I would have it at all," Petra replied, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. "I convinced myself I was fine alone, that work was enough. But this us, it is everything." "I love you," Connor said, the words coming easily now. "I love you too," Petra responded. "So much." Life settled into a new normal. Petra adjusted to the routines of their household, learning that Macy needed structure and consistency, that homework happened right after school, that Thursdays were library days, that Saturday mornings were for cartoons and pancakes. She learned Connor's moods, could tell when a job had gone poorly or when money stress was weighing on him, and she learned when to push and when to just be present. Connor learned Petra's stress signals, recognized when she needed to work late or when a board meeting had been particularly difficult. He learned to be her safe harbor, the place she could come to escape the pressures of running a company. He learned that sometimes she just needed him to hold her while she processed her day, no advice needed, just presence. For Macy, having Petra in their home full-time was an adventure. She helped Petra cook dinner, teaching her the recipes Connor had perfected over the years. She showed Petra how to braid hair, something Petra had never learned. She shared her fears and her joys with Petra the way she did with Connor, trusting this new adult in her life completely. 6 months after Petra moved in, Connor was offered a promotion at his construction company, a move into project management that would mean steadier hours and better pay. He had been working toward it for years, and when it finally came through, his first call was to Petra. "That is amazing." She squealed into the phone, her excitement palpable. "I am so proud of you. We are celebrating tonight. Anywhere you want to go." They went to the restaurant where they had their first date with Macy, the family-friendly place that had become special to all three of them. Over dinner, Macy presented Connor with a card she and Petra had secretly made, congratulating him on his promotion. Connor read the carefully written words, Macy's handwriting getting neater as she practiced, and felt overwhelming gratitude for his life. Speech, speech. Macy chanted, and Petra joined in, both of them grinning at him. All right, Connor laughed, standing up in the booth. He looked at his daughter and the woman he loved, his heart so full it hurt. "I just want to say thank you. Macy, you are the reason I work so hard, the reason I get up every morning and keep going. You make everything worthwhile. And Petra, you came into our lives like a whirlwind and changed everything. You made me believe in love again, in partnership, in the possibility of happiness. You both make me want to be better, do better. I love you both so much." Macy clapped enthusiastically, and other diners joined in, making Connor blush as he sat back down. Petra leaned over and kissed him, her eyes shining. "We love you too," she said simply. That night, after they had put Macy to bed and were curled up on the couch together, Petra said, "I have been thinking about something." "What is that?" Connor asked, running his fingers through her hair. "I want us to get married." "Not right now. I know we should probably date longer or whatever the rules are, but I want you to know that is where I see this going. I want to be your wife. I want to officially be Macy's parent. I want to build a whole future with you both." Connor's heart stopped, then started again at double speed. "Are you proposing to me?" "I guess I am," Petra said, biting her lip nervously. "Is that okay? I know traditionally the guy asks, but I have never been very traditional." Connor kissed her, pouring everything he felt into it. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "Yes, whenever you want, however you want, yes. I want to marry you, Petra. I want you to be my wife and Macy's mom, and I want to spend the rest of my life loving you. But I have a condition," Connor added, pulling back slightly. "I want to propose to you properly. Let you beat me to the verbal proposal, but I want to do it right." Petra laughed, tears streaming down her face. "Deal." 3 weeks later, Connor took Petra and Macy back to the park where he and Petra had first kissed. It was a beautiful autumn evening, the air crisp and the leaves brilliant with color. They walked along the same path they had walked months before, but this time Macy ran ahead, her job to make sure they made it to the right spot at the right time. When they reached the bench overlooking the lake, Petra gasped. It was decorated with flowers and candles, and Marcus stood nearby with a camera, ready to capture the moment. Mrs. Chen was there too, holding Macy's hand, both of them grinning hugely. "Connor, what is this?" Petra asked, her voice shaking. Connor took her hands in his palms sweaty with nerves despite knowing she would say yes. "Petra Vaughn, 9 months ago you literally blew into my life on a gust of wind. You were this untouchable, amazing woman, and I was just a guy trying to help. But somehow, against all odds, we found each other. You have made me believe in love again. You have been patient with my stubbornness and my pride. You have loved my daughter like she was your own. You have shown me that differences in circumstances do not matter when hearts are aligned. So I am asking you, in front of the people we love most, will you marry me?" He dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring box. The ring inside was modest by Petra's standards, the best Connor could afford even with his promotion, but he had chosen it carefully, a simple band with a small diamond that caught the light. Petra was openly crying now, nodding before she could even speak. "Yes," she finally managed. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Connor slipped the ring on her finger, and she pulled him up into a kiss as Macy cheered and Marcus snapped photos. When they finally broke apart, Macy ran over and jumped into their arms, and the three of them stood there, wrapped in a group embrace, while their small but mighty support system applauded. "I have something too," Petra said through her tears. She pulled a small box from her pocket and opened it to reveal a simple platinum band. "This is for you, because if we are doing this, we are doing it as equals, as partners. Will you wear this, Connor Lawson, as a symbol of my promise to love you and Macy for the rest of my life?" Connor extended his hand, tears now streaming down his own face, and Petra slipped the ring onto his finger. It fit perfectly. They set a date for the following spring, wanting time to plan but not wanting to wait too long. The engagement period was a happy blur of decisions and preparations, though they kept it simple. Neither of them wanted a huge, elaborate wedding. What mattered was the commitment, the promise, not the spectacle. Petra insisted on involving Macy in everything. She took her dress shopping, not for a flower girl dress, but for something Macy would actually want to wear. They chose flowers together and cake flavors. They talked about what it would mean when Petra officially became Macy's stepmother, how they would honor Sarah's memory while also celebrating this new chapter. Connor had a harder time with the wedding planning, not because he did not care, but because the reality of marrying someone like Petra still sometimes felt surreal. His friends and coworkers were thrilled for him, but he overheard whispers, comments about gold diggers and sugar mamas that made his blood boil even though they were directed at him, not Petra. "People are talking," he told Petra one night as they addressed wedding invitations at the kitchen table. "Let them talk," Petra said without looking up. "Their opinions do not matter. What matters is us, our love, our family. What if people think I am using you for your money?" Petra set down her pen and looked at him seriously. "Connor Lawson, anyone who spends 5 minutes with us knows that is not true. You have tried to pay for things you could not afford because you were too proud to let me help. You have never once asked me for anything. You work yourself to exhaustion to provide for Macy. If people want to gossip, that is their problem, not ours. I know who you are. Macy knows who you are. That is all that matters." Connor took a deep breath and nodded. She was right. He could not control what people thought or said. All he could control was how he showed up for the people he loved, how he honored this relationship. The wedding was held in the same park where Connor had proposed, in the spring when everything was blooming and full of life. It was a small gathering, just close friends and family, Marcus serving as best man and Macy as the maid of honor, a title she took extremely seriously. Petra looked stunning in a simple white dress, and Connor wore his best suit, the one Petra had secretly had tailored to fit him perfectly. As they stood under an arch decorated with flowers, exchanging vows they had written themselves, Connor felt time stop. This moment, this woman, this life they were building, it was everything. "I promise to be your partner," Connor said, his voice thick with emotion. "To let you help me when I need it and to be there for you when you need me. I promise to love Macy with everything I have while making room in my heart and my life for you. I promise to remember that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. I promise to choose us every single day for the rest of my life." Petra's vows were equally heartfelt. "I promise to honor the man you are, not try to change you into someone else. I promise to love Macy as my own while respecting the memory of her mother. I promise to build a life with you that balances both our needs, both our worlds. I promise that you will never just be the poor guy who caught my papers in the wind. You will always be the love of my life, the man who taught me what real connection means. I choose you, Connor, today and always." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, their kiss was tender and full of promise. As they turned to face their guests, hands clasped tightly together, Macy between them holding both their free hands, Connor felt complete in a way he had not since before Sarah died. This was his family, his future, his forever. The reception was held at a nearby restaurant Petra had rented out, fancy but not ostentatious, a perfect reflection of how they had learned to blend their lives. There was dinner and dancing, toasts that made everyone laugh and cry, and a cake that Macy had helped design with more frosting flowers than was probably necessary. During their first dance, Petra whispered in Connor's ear, I have a surprise for you. Another one. The honeymoon you planned was already too much. Not that kind of surprise. Well, partially that kind. Connor, I am pregnant. Connor stopped moving, nearly stepping on her feet. What? Petra laughed, her eyes shining. Surprise, I found out 2 days ago. I wanted to tell you at the right moment, and this felt right. We are going to have a baby. Connor picked her up and spun her around, not caring that everyone was watching. We are having a baby. Macy is going to be a big sister. Yes and yes, Petra confirmed, laughing as he set her down and kissed her soundly. They told Macy that night, after they had returned home from the reception, the three of them curled up together in Connor and Petra's bed. Macy was thrilled, immediately wanting to know if it would be a brother or sister, and could she help pick names, and would the baby sleep in her room sometimes. We will figure it all out together, Petra assured her. But this means we are really and truly a family now, all 4 of us. All 4 of us, Macy repeated, placing her small hand on Petra's still flat stomach. I am going to be the best big sister ever. Connor watched his daughter and his wife, his heart overflowing. You know what, kiddo, I believe you will be. The pregnancy was relatively easy for Petra, though she had to reduce her hours at work more than she had planned. Connor's promotion meant he could be more flexible too, able to attend doctor appointments and help around the house when Petra was exhausted. They turned the small den into a nursery, painting it a soft yellow since they decided to keep the baby's gender a surprise. Macy threw herself into big sister preparations, reading books about babies, helping Connor assemble the crib, talking to Petra's stomach every night before bed. The whole process was healing for Connor in ways he had not expected. He had been so focused on just surviving after Sarah died, on being enough for Macy, that he had forgotten what it felt like to dream about the future, to plan and hope and anticipate joy. 7 months into the pregnancy, as they were finishing dinner one evening, Petra said, I have been thinking about something. What is that? Connor asked, helping Macy clear the plates. I want to adopt Macy, legally. I know you already put me on her school forms and medical authorizations, but I want it to be official. I want her to have my last name if she wants it, or we can hyphenate. I want her to know that legally, emotionally, in every way possible, she is my daughter too. Macy dropped the plate she was holding, fortunately onto the table rather than the floor. Really, you want to adopt me? More than anything, Petra said, her voice thick. If that is okay with you. Macy looked at Connor, seeking permission or reassurance, and he nodded, his own eyes wet. It is your choice, baby. Your mom will always be your mom, but having 2 moms does not diminish that. It just means you are loved by more people. Can I have both names? Macy asked. Lawson and Vaughn, because I am proud to be a Lawson, but I want to be a Vaughn too. Macy Lawson Vaughn, Petra said, trying it out. I think it is perfect. They started the adoption process the following week, and while there was paperwork and waiting periods, the judge who eventually finalized it commented that he had rarely seen such a clear case of a child thriving with a step-parent. On the day the adoption became official, they went out for ice cream, Macy proudly showing everyone her new legal name on the certificate. 2 months later, in the early hours of a Tuesday morning, Petra went into labor. Connor drove them to the hospital, holding her hand through contractions while Mrs. Chen stayed with a sleeping Macy. The labor was long but not complicated, and when their son was born just after dawn, Connor cut the cord with hands that shook with emotion. They named him Lucas Henry. Lucas for Petra's father and Henry for Connor's. He was perfect, with Petra's nose and Connor's ears and a full head of dark hair. When they brought him home 2 days later, Macy was waiting with a handmade welcome sign and barely contained excitement. He is so small, she whispered, looking down at her baby brother with wonder. You were this small once, Connor reminded her, settling onto the couch with Lucas in his arms while Petra rested. Now you are going to help us teach him everything. Life with a newborn was exhausting and wonderful and messy in all the best ways. Petra took maternity leave, something she had never imagined doing before meeting Connor, and Connor arranged his work schedule to be home as much as possible. They were sleep-deprived and running on coffee and love, but they were happy. Macy was indeed the best big sister, helping with diaper changes, singing to Lucas when he cried, proudly telling everyone at school about her baby brother. She never showed signs of jealousy, secure in the knowledge that her place in the family was solid. As Lucas grew, the apartment that had seemed adequate began to feel cramped. Connor and Petra talked about it late one night while they took turns walking a fussy Lucas around the living room. "We need more space," Petra said. "Not just for physical room, but a yard maybe for the kids to play." "I cannot afford a house in the city," Connor said, the familiar tension of financial differences creeping back. "Connor," Petra said gently, "we are married. It is not your money or my money." "It is our money. We are a team, remember?" Connor sighed, shifting Lucas to his other shoulder. "I know, I am working on it, but it is hard, feeling like I cannot contribute equally to something like buying a house." "You contribute in 1,000 other ways. You are an incredible father. You cook dinner most nights because you are better at it. You fix things around here before I even notice they are broken. You make me laugh. You love me. That is worth more than any financial contribution." She paused. "But if it makes you feel better, your promotion means you are contributing significantly to our household income. This would not be just my house. It would be ours, built on both our efforts." They spent the next few months house hunting, looking for something that felt like home. Eventually, they found it. A 3-bedroom house in a neighborhood that was not too far from Connor's work, with a small yard and good schools. It needed some renovation, which Connor could do himself, making it feel more like his contribution to their shared life. The move happened just before Lucas's first birthday and Macy's 9th. It was chaotic, with boxes everywhere and furniture that did not quite fit, and Connor working late every night to fix up different rooms. But slowly, the house came together, becoming a home that reflected all of them. Macy's room was painted her favorite purple, with space for her growing collection of books and her artwork on the walls. The nursery was sunny and cheerful, perfect for a toddler learning to walk. Connor and Petra's room was a sanctuary, a space that was just theirs after the kids went to bed. The living room was designed for family time, comfortable and lived in. The kitchen became Connor's domain, where he cooked meals that brought them all together around the table. For Lucas's first birthday, they had a party in their new backyard. Friends and family gathered to celebrate. Watching Lucas smash his first cake while Macy laughed and Petra filmed the whole thing, Connor felt a profound sense of gratitude. His life had not turned out anything like he had planned. He had lost Sarah far too young, had struggled as a single parent, had barely made ends meet for years. But somehow, through all of that, he had found Petra. And she had not saved him or rescued him. Instead, she had partnered with him, building something new together. Later that night, after the kids were in bed and they were cleaning up the remnants of the party, Petra said, "You know what I realized today?" "What is that?" Connor asked, tying off a garbage bag. "I used to think success was measured in company growth and profit margins and board approval. But this, today, watching our kids play in our yard with people who love us, this is success. This is what matters." Connor crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "I love you, Petra Lawson. I love you too, Connor Lawson. Years passed in the way they do when life is full and happy." Macy grew into a confident teenager, excelling in school and talking about going to college to study business like Petra or engineering like she imagined her mother might have done. Lucas was a whirlwind of energy, all boy and constantly challenging Connor to keep up. Petra found better balance with her work, delegating more and being present for school events and family dinners. Connor's career continued to advance, his natural leadership skills making him invaluable to his company. They had challenges, of course. Parenting teenagers was not easy, and there were times when Macy's grief for the mother she barely remembered would surface in unexpected ways. Money was still sometimes tight, despite Petra's success, because they were adamant about living within Connor's means plus Petra's contribution, not letting her wealth become a crutch. There were work stresses and health scares and all the normal ups and downs of life. But through it all, they had each other. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Connor surprised Petra with a renewal of their vows in the same park where they had married. This time, Macy and Lucas participated, each of them speaking about what family meant to them. "You taught me that family is not just blood," Macy said, now 14 and poised beyond her years. "It is choice. Every day, you both choose to love us and each other. That is the most important thing I have learned." Lucas, only 6, simply said, "I love our family," which made everyone laugh and cry at the same time. On their 10th anniversary, Petra surprised Connor by having his truck, which he had kept running all these years, fully restored. It was painted and repaired and looked better than new, a symbol of how far they had come while honoring where they had started. For their 15th anniversary, Connor surprised Petra with a trip to Ireland, just the two of them, leaving the kids with Macy, now 22 and perfectly capable, and Mrs. Chen, who was like a grandmother to both kids. They spent 2 weeks exploring, reconnecting, remembering why they had fallen in love in the first place. As they sat in a pub in Dublin, listening to traditional music and sipping Guinness, Petra took Connor's hand across the table. "Do you remember that day when my papers went flying everywhere?" "How could I forget?" Connor said, bringing her hand to his lips. "Best day of my life." "Mine too," Petra agreed. "I was so stressed that day, running late for a meeting that felt like it would make or break my career. I was frantic about those papers, convinced losing them would be a disaster. And then this handsome guy in paint-stained jeans started grabbing them out of the air like some kind of superhero, and his beautiful daughter was cheering him on, and I just knew. In that moment, I knew my life was about to change." "I thought you were out of my league," Connor admitted. "I nearly did not give you my number because I could not imagine what someone like you would want with someone like me. Someone like me wanted someone real, someone honest, someone who loved with his whole heart, someone exactly like you." She squeezed his hand. "I would not change a single thing about our story, Connor, not one thing." "Neither would I," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You and the kids, our life together, it is everything I never knew I needed." They returned home to find Lucas had gotten into some teenage trouble. Nothing serious, but enough to require parental intervention. Macy had handled it like a pro, but she was clearly relieved to hand the reins back over. As they dealt with Lucas's consequence and talked through his choices, Connor caught Petra's eye across the dinner table. This was life, messy and imperfect and absolutely perfect all at once. Years continued to pass. Macy graduated from college and started her own tech company, inspired by Petra but determined to forge her own path. She fell in love with a kind man who reminded Connor a bit of himself, someone grounded and real. Their wedding was beautiful, and Connor cried through the whole thing, proud beyond measure of the woman his daughter had become. Lucas found his passion in architecture, wanting to build things like his dad, but with a designer's eye. He went to school on the East Coast, and though they missed him terribly, Connor and Petra supported his dreams the way they always had. When they were alone in the house again, empty nesters for the first time, Connor and Petra rediscovered each other. They traveled more, both of them semi-retired. They volunteered together at a shelter for single parents, helping people navigate the challenges Connor once faced. They spent time with friends, hosted family dinners when the kids came home, and enjoyed the quiet moments that had been so rare when the house was full of noise and chaos. On the 25th anniversary of the day Connor caught Petra's papers, they returned to that street corner downtown. It had changed over the years, the city evolving around it, but the corner was still there. They stood in the spot where they had met, hands clasped, remembering. "You know what is funny?" Connor said, looking around. "This fancy business district was so intimidating to me back then. I felt like I did not belong anywhere near here, but I chased your papers anyway." "And I am so glad you did," Petra said, leaning into him. 25 years ago, I thought I had everything figured out. My career was my life. Success meant profit margins and market share. I had no idea what I was missing. And now I know that success is measured in moments, in watching our kids grow into amazing adults. In still wanting to hold your hand after 22 years of marriage. In building a life that honored both our worlds instead of choosing one over the other. She turned to face him, her eyes still that striking green that had captivated him from the start, now framed by laugh lines and the wisdom of years. "You gave me everything, Connor Lawson." "We gave each other everything," he corrected, pulling her close. "That is what partnership means." They kissed there on that corner, two people who had built a beautiful life from an unlikely beginning, their love story still being written with every passing day. The wind picked up, swirling leaves around them, and Connor thought about how a gust of wind on an autumn day had changed everything. How catching papers had led to catching feelings, which had led to building a family and a future. In the end, it did not matter that he had been a struggling single dad and she had been a CEO. What mattered was that they had seen past the surface differences to the people underneath. They had chosen to build bridges instead of walls, to compromise and communicate and love fiercely through every challenge. Their story was not about rich and poor, about rescue or charity. It was about two people who found each other when neither was looking, who built something real and lasting despite all the reasons it might not have worked. It was about family, chosen and built with intention and love. It was about showing up, every single day, for the people who mattered most. It was quite simply a love story. And it was theirs. As they walked back to their car, Connor's arm around Petra's shoulders, he thought about everything they had been through. The struggles and the triumphs, the tears and the laughter, the ordinary days and the extraordinary moments. Every bit of it had been worth it. Every single bit. Because in the end, catching those papers in the wind had been the beginning of catching a lifetime of happiness. And he would do it all over again in a heartbeat.